Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne and this is where we talk about marketing data, and this week a little bit of philosophy because I want to talk about strangers and our relationship to them. Americans are scary, or at least this was the opinion of my goddaughter. A couple of weeks back we were in Walt Disney World, great trip, everybody should go, but she found the friendliness and openness of Americans to be a little bit scary and off-putting and not natural. She said to me, "Why is everybody being so nice?" And I was like, "Well, they kind of pay them to be nice. We're on vacation. Like, even at 6 in the morning, that's just not normal." There was an elderly couple who we had a Skyliner trip with them, so like a 5-minute journey. And, we're talking to them in the Skyliner and asking us what we do and all that kind of stuff and what our trip's about. And then they saw us in the park and was like, "Hey guys, how's everything going?" She's like, "Why are these people talking to us? We had a 5-minute journey with them. Why are they talking to us?" She found it very unusual. And I found that very, very amusing. While we were in the parks, she and we began to people watch. And you might be surprised as somebody who is a data person and is constantly saying to back everything up with data that I really like people watching. I like a game of presumptions to look at somebody and try and guess their sort of backstory and who they are and all that kind of stuff and what their dark secrets are. So we were playing that game quite a bit while we were on vacation. And it's interesting because it makes you think about what are the signals that people are giving off to the world in what they wear, how do they walk, how do they talk, who are they with, what is the energy they're giving off. And of course, that begs the question of what energy am I giving off in what I wear and do and talk and all of that sort of things. And that's especially interesting when you're seeing it through the sort of prism of Disney World, which is not really reality. It's a holiday version of yourself in a very hot place, which means that you are more likely to wear certain kinds of clothes. But we did find it somewhat amusing, these poor dads who had obviously bought into the idea. They've got the Mickey ears on, they've got the Disney t-shirts, and you can just tell they're having a bad time and they're at the edge of their, grumpiness and really trying to keep it together in the hot Florida sun. So yeah, we started to play this game. And during the course of our vacation, she bumped into a YouTuber level of sort of fame where they've got their own merchandise, a lot of subscribers, this kind of thing. Not somebody I knew, somebody who plays video games. And this particular lady happened to be on her own and we were together. And so the three of us spent the day together. Lovely person. I'm not going to say who it is. But we get back to the hotel and my goddaughter says to me, "Go on then. What's your presumptions about that lady?" And so I gave my presumptions, and I had presumed that the reason that she went into video games is because she must have had some sort of illness when she was younger, maybe something chronic that meant she was inside. And so video games are an escape from that. They are sort of wish fulfillment. You can do whatever you want in the video game that maybe you can't do in real life. This particular lady talked to us and said that she was divorced, but she mentioned her husband or ex-husband a little bit too much. So I guessed that she was not actually divorced yet. She was just going through the process. And I also guessed she was very self-effacing. She wasn't a very confident person in the way that she talked about herself. And so I guessed that maybe she had sort of a bad relationship with her parents. And of course, my goddaughter, who knew a lot of backstory and watched a lot of streams of this person, said, two of these things were definitely true. We met back up with them the next week because at that point I sort of had to know, if my third presumption was true. And yes, she was not actually divorced yet. She was still going for that divorce. And she was like, "Why were you talking about this?" And I explained. She's like, "I can't believe you would guess something like that." But it was from the way that she was talking. And this prompted a really interesting question in me, which was strangers and our relationship with them. And sometimes it can seem as if a complete stranger knows you better than you know yourself. Why is that? And has there been research done on that? And I found that there's not been a lot of research done on that, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, because I think understanding strangers and our relationship with strangers is kind of interesting. So when we look historically, we had very bad relationships with strangers. Adam Smith in 1719 says that we can only expect real sympathy from real friends and not from mere acquaintances. And in 1973, Mark Granovetter, you can see I look over here because I've got notes, said that the bedrock of our social network was our strong ties to an inner circle and a support for weak ties for information acquaintances. But in recent years, that's kind of been discounted. And what we found, there's a researcher called Small who found that actually about half of what we talk about, important things to us, we actually discuss with strangers and with acquaintances, and not just our sort of confidence and inner circle, which is really, really interesting to begin with. And we can all sort of guess the reasons why, but let's just come back to that in a second. More recent research by Simon Vizaya, I've definitely said that wrong, Simon Vizaya from Washington University, said that internally we're very good at assessing our own neurotic traits, such as anxiety, but that friends are actually a much better barometer of how smart we are, of how creative we are, of how outgoing or extroverted or introverted we are, and that strangers are actually equal to friends in assessing this when they first meet us. And strangers, they're just a friend we haven't met yet, right? There is another sort of social scientist, Dietland Stoll, who for many decades said that the phrase stranger danger was very, very bad for society, and that teaching young children and ingraining in them over and over again that strangers are a threat and we should be afraid to them had long-reaching consequences, because just imagine the amount of opportunities, financial opportunities that you miss by not talking to strangers, by not opening yourself up to the opportunity of meeting new people. And I think that that's very true. And in recent years, because of technology, our relationship with strangers has sort of changed quite dramatically. If you are somebody with kids and you're teaching them this, instead of teaching them to be afraid of strange people, teach them to be afraid of strange behavior, because the likelihood that like a stranger will snatch your kid is actually less than that your child will be hit by lightning. So it's not very likely to happen. Don't want to say it's impossible or anything. It's a serious matter, but it's not very likely. The much more likely is that somebody they know will try and take them and take them away. And so it's better to teach them to look for strange behavior. Hey, your uncle wasn't supposed to pick you up and then he suddenly shows up. That's strange behavior. Or even, hey, your dad suddenly starts taking you to a place that you don't know and you're not expecting it, and he doesn't want you to tell mom, and all this kind of stuff. So teach your children to be wary of strange behavior, not strange people or different people that they don't know, because as Dietland Stoll says, maybe it will have far-reaching consequences. Now, in recent years, our relationship with strangers has changed quite dramatically, because today we get in a stranger's car and they drive us to our home. So we're giving them our home address. They deliver our food. We buy things from them on the internet. We give them money and we hope that it's going to come to us, this thing that we've ordered, and we hope that they'll give us our money back if we're not happy with it. We date people who are complete strangers. And this is a very, very new phenomenon, really. I mean, I still remember the time that dating somebody online was considered a little bit, it was still a talking point. And today, most of us have probably met our significant others through online dating and not in real life. So it just shows you how quickly we've adapted to the idea that there's nothing necessarily to fear in strangers. And in fact, understanding strangers is a real key skill in life and in business as well. All the time we are having to meet new stakeholders, new people that we are selling to, perhaps, new people working on projects. And all of these people are essentially strangers to us. Even the people that we know on a day-to-day basis, we don't know the full version of themselves. We know a work version of themselves, but we don't really necessarily get to see a full picture of these people. They are so unknown to us in many ways. We don't know what's going on in their personal life that might be affecting their performance at work or why they're grumpy and all this kind of stuff. And so understanding people as quickly as possible and as well as possible is a really good skill. And that can only happen through presumptions and through active listening, which is an art I worry that we are soon losing. My belief is that most people do not hide their intentions particularly well. Maybe the first time that you meet them, maybe a couple of times, but most people, if you listen and you really listen well to what they're telling you, you will understand what they want from you and what they're trying to convey. And sometimes what they're trying to convey and what they de-emphasize or what they don't say to you gives you the knowledge that you need in your head. Because people want certain things from you and they will mention things a couple more times. If it's important to them, they will mention it a few more times. And we come across situations where you're selling to somebody and they might mention budget a few times, and so okay, that's probably an important thing to them. Or you're dating somebody, and so you're actively listening for red flags because you don't want to waste your time dating the wrong person. And so you're trying to see, hey, are they mentioning their ex-husband a few too many times? And that's a bad sign that they haven't got over them, and so that's a red flag. And so we are all in situations in which we need to actively listen to what somebody emphasizes and what they don't emphasize. But too often the problem is that when we're in meetings, we are not listening. We are waiting to reply. The old phrase is that the opposite of listening is the opposite of talking is not listening, it's waiting to reply. And that's very true for most people. I think in a lot of meetings, sometimes you go in and you have a thing to say. And in your mind, you're thinking about what you're going to say. You're sort of rehearsing the thing that you want to say in this meeting, your contribution to that meeting, which might be your only contribution for the whole meeting. Otherwise, you're not saying anything. And whatever that thought is going through your head, you're not really paying 100% attention to what somebody is saying to you. You're not writing down the key words that they say again and again. Something I like to do in all of my meetings is I'll write down any phrase that somebody says, and then if they say it a second time, I underline it, and I keep underlining it. And then from that little exercise, I normally find out what somebody has said. And I also try and understand where somebody might be hinting towards something that they can't quite tell you in that meeting for whatever reason. Sometimes if they shy away from an answer, or if they suddenly sort of mention, it's going to happen at this sort of timeline, or I still need to talk to this person, you can sort of get a hint that maybe there's other things that are going off in the background that you're not privy to. They can't talk to you about necessarily, but they sort of hinting to you that they want to be aware. And so active listening is a skill that in a world where we are constantly distracted and we are allowing ourselves to be distracted by notifications, by Slack, by email, by a willingness that we're thinking about our own selves, we're not giving ourselves time to think, time to properly process, time to take in information. And without this, it becomes more difficult to understand strangers better and to understand what they're trying to convey to us. Because to me, strangers are a mirror in two respects. One is people are sharing with us a version of themselves, and we can try and understand what version they're trying to put across and understand the truth of that version. But they're also a mirror. They're a mirror into our own selves. If you have recently been hurt by a relationship, it's much more likely you will see the negative traits from your last relationship in somebody new, and maybe you'll discount them. The presumptions that you make when making a stranger can also tell you a lot about your own self. And that's why they can be very useful in business presumptions, because if you assume that, you're a skincare brand, you assume that maybe people in their 30s are going to be the people who start to worry about how they look, and that's going to be your market. You can make that presumption. You can see the activity online. You can see your sales figures. And then maybe you will find that your presumption is wrong because you can then back it up with data. But having that presumption is really important because you will have had that presumption in your mind when you made a lot of decisions, when you made your marketing. And so understanding how you see strangers or how you see customers or how you see clients is also a useful exercise. And so strangers, they're friends we haven't met yet. They are people who can tell us interesting things about ourselves because they have a impartial opinion and they don't have skin in the game. So they're not as worried about giving us a nice truth or worried about offending us in many occasions. We have a more transactional relationship with them. So sometimes they can be very useful sounding boards. And of course, external people who don't have the entire back history, they don't have to see all the people that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. Consultants can have that laser vision on what's wrong and what needs to happen because they're outside and they don't need to know the whole history about it. So strangers are friends we haven't met yet. They can tell us a lot about how we see the world. And if we listen actively, we can understand them a lot quicker, which is a very useful skill to have in forming relationships. This has been my thought for the week. Thanks very much for watching. Let's see what I talk about next week.